mobilize Nigerian students? Yes. Let me welcome all of us to this very important event, the unveiling of our new publication, titled 10 Reasons Why Tinubu Student Loan is a Scam. As you all know, the ELC has been at the forefront of the agitation against anti-poor education policies. Since the student loan bill was signed to law on 12 June 2023, we have been campaigning against it, exposing its contradictions and its unworkability. Despite our best efforts and the mass opposition of a broad spectrum of society, including stakeholders in the education sector, the President Tinubu administration has insisted it will go ahead with this policy starting from January 2024. According to the 2024 appropriation bill, a sum of 50 billion naira has been voted for this loan policy, even while the allocation to education remained at one of its worst ever, a minuscule 7.9% of the budget. This publication is being presented to the public today with the support of Action Aid Nigeria as part of the effort of the ELC, working with other progressive and radical groups within and outside the education sector to continue to expose the contradictions and workability of this loan policy. This publication contains important facts and evidence about why this loan policy is ill-thought, unnecessary, unworkable, anti-poor, and a cleverly packaged gimmick meant to destroy the entire fabric of public education in Nigeria to the detriment of the Nigerian people and our children's future. By launching this pamphlet today, we are saying that having realized that the Tinubu government does not listen to wise counsel, we are prepared to take our case to the court of public opinion by spreading these pamphlets to all campuses nationwide in order to begin to mobilize Nigerian students and education workers against this criminal policy. In this pamphlet, we were able to demonstrate that the student loan policy is a scam. It claims to open access to higher education for indigent students, but in the real sense, what it does is shut the door firmly against those who need education. It is being presented as a solution to the wave of fear raging across campuses right now. Meanwhile, this policy itself is what is enabling fear as university administrators just to ensure they have a cost-reflective fee regime before January 2024. Last but not the least, this loan policy will force students into a lifelong indebtedness. Our key findings includes that the student loan is a smokescreen to take education out of the rich or the poor. We also confirm that the policy will transform public education into a business and students into customers. We also, from our research, realized that this loan policy has never worked anywhere. In the 1970s in this country, this loan policy was also introduced by the military regime, and it failed. It failed after a few years. And in many parts of the world, including the US and UK, where you have had this loan policy for the past few years, it has led to high cost of education with college fees rising astronomically over the past few decades in the United States alone, to the extent that many people cannot even afford college in the US, despite the student loan. Apart from that, is that the student loan in this part of the world has also led the beneficiaries in these places to lifelong indebtedness, with the loan causing all kinds of anxieties, depression, including even suicide among many. Many people in the UK and the US say that after school they are not able to start a life, they are not able to get married, because their income, a huge percentage of it, goes on to pay student loan. In the UK today, the average number of years for people to pay their student loans is about 40 years. So just imagine somebody leaves university at the age of 26, 27, and they have to spend the next 40 years paying a student loan. When exactly will they have enough resources to even begin to plan their life and to begin to move forward with their life? And that is the kind of policy that our president has brought to Nigerian people, as a gift to us. And that's why we say that we must reject it. It has not worked anywhere. It's not going to work in Nigeria, a country where graduates leave the university, and for 5 years after, they don't even have a job. Those who have a job are being paid 30,000 naira minimum wage. If you are being paid 30,000 naira as a worker, you have to pay a percentage of it every month to service student loan. How much will actually be left for you, to survive? Then we have also discovered through this publication and the research work that went into it that the loan scheme will only cater to a minority of the indigent student population. By the time, Comrade Akike is going to review this publication for us, begins to go into the nitty-gritty of what we found, we are going to be shocked that at the end of the day, this loan policy, especially the 50 billion that has been put in the 2024 budget, if it's approved, is only going to cater for a very minor percentage of the student population. So at the end of the day, it will not solve the problem of access to education for the vast majority of indigent Nigerian students who are battling rising fee hike and high cost of education and actually need support, for their studies. Part of our findings is that this loan policy will not resolve the problem of access, even for the minority of students that are able to pay the loan. What we mean is that even for the little percentage of students who are lucky to get this loan, and the journalists, will remember that at a previous occasion in August or thereabout, we had a press conference where we subjected the loan act itself to point-by-point, paragraph-by-paragraph examination, and we discovered that many of the requirements put in the act will ensure that very few people will be able to meet up with it. But what we are even saying that for the little they're able to get the loan, this new research work we have done actually now confirms that even those ones will still not be able to have full access to education based on the student loan. And what do we mean by this? The student loan is meant to cater for tuition. That is what the act says. Tuition is just a minor percentage of the regime of fees payable, in our university system and tertiary education system across the country today. There is something you call sundry fees, which include ICT fee, library fee, accommodation, and co. Sometimes we can go as high as 150,000, even 200,000 in some universities. So if government supports you to pay with a loan to pay a fee, your tuition fee, how exactly are you going to pay, the remaining sundry amount? You can go as high, as hundreds of thousands of naira. If you look at the university system today, in many universities, we found that at least 40% of students are compelled to take up accommodation outside of the campus because it's either the accommodation within the university is not adequate or they don't even exist. So if somebody pays their tuition and they don't have money to get accommodation at Akoka or at Yanova, how exactly would they be able, to go through school for that one academic session? So what we are saying therefore is that we are going to realize that the student loan, even for those who are able to get it, does not resolve any of these key problems for them. The student loan policy, according to our findings, we also lead to mass dropouts and decline in enrollment. And what we mean is this: the government has already allowed administrators of universities to increase school fees exponentially over the last few years. In fact, this year alone, school fees has increased by more than 600 to 800%. So what this means is that if you are unlucky, and I'm sorry to say, a majority of undergraduate students will be unlucky not to get the loan. It means that you would have to pay higher level of fees even than before. So what that therefore means is that in the next few years, those who are going to be left in our university system will be two categories of students. Those lucky enough, and that is a minority, to get the loan, as well as children of rich parents who can be able to pay the 300,000 or the 250,000 that fees would have gotten to in places like Unilag or LASU and other places. The rest of us, that is the children of working people, the children of poor people, will find themselves outside of the university system. So when the ASU president said last week that over the next 3 years, 50% of the current undergraduate population in the university system are likely to dropout, he was not just giving figures out of the air. He was talking about the reality of what is going to happen on the basis of this new policy of the government. And we have seen it before. In 2014, at Lagos State University, in 2012, rather, at Lagos State University, school fees was increased from 25,000 to about 350,000. For the next 3 years, LASU began to have a decline in its enrollment to the extent that by the third year, you now had in LASU, for instance, in some 100 level and 200 level classes, maybe 18 students or 15 students. And in this department, you have 18 PhD holders, you have 25 professors. So the idea now is that about 35 lecturers, including PhD holders and professors, are now going to be teaching 15 students. So by the third year, even the jobs of lecturers already, became threatened at the Lagos State University because of the sharp drop in the student population. And it was at that point that everybody, including students and workers in LASU, decided to stand up and they began to fight to get the school fees completely reversed. We think that what happened in LASU at those times is what is going to happen on a nationwide basis because of the student loan policy that the government wants to start implementing from January. LASU was the laboratory and we saw what happened. Imagine that happening on a nationwide basis. Hundreds of thousands of students are going to drop out. Tens of thousands who are writing job are getting admission. Once the expensive, like I said, for that only those who get the loan or those who have rich parents would actually be able to remain in our public universities. And of course, last but not the least, I already mentioned that this student loan, according to our findings, will lead to job loss, for education workers. The last point is that we also discovered that the student loan policy is based on a false assumption. The assumption by the Tinubu government is that Nigeria is too poor to fund education. We disagree with this. We think that the government is lying. And all available facts and evidence shows that the government is lying. That Nigeria is actually rich enough to fund education, to fund public health care, to fund the real needs of the people. But you have a very corrupt, rotten capitalist elite that does not want to spend money on what matters to the people, but rather can use that money, about 3 billion naira, to sponsor itself and some full hangers on to Dubai COP28. That same government is voting billions of naira to repair the residencies of the vice president and of the president, while Nigerian students in Unilag, in LASU, in OAU, in UI, are sleeping on bedbug infested mattresses in the ramshackle hostels. If this government really says that there's no resources for this country, then we expect that the bed tightening and the sacrifice will come from the government itself. But at the period when they are saying there is no money, they are spending record amount of resources to take care of their own convenience. That is why we disagree with them. Think that there's money to fund education, and this money can be saved and rescued from the hands of those who are stealing it to begin to inject it into the education sector. 6 years ago, the Academic Staff Union of Universities asked the federal government to begin to inject the university system about 200 billion naira annually over a period of 6 years, all amounting to about 1.1 trillion naira. And that position was made by ASU in 2013 on the basis of a visitation panel or the finding of the government itself when it did what it called a need assessment of the conditions of public universities across the country and discovered serious infrastructural gaps across universities. They discovered that there were laboratories in the universities which were using kerosene stove instead of Bunsen burners. They discovered libraries in many of our campuses where there were no books at all, and yet they called them libraries. And as we said, if you could inject this amount within a period of 6 years, then we can begin to reposition. They have refused to do that over the past few years. But our findings today through this publication actually shows that not only can they pay this money that ASU has demanded to begin to resolve the problem affecting public education in this country, they can even save more money than what ASU is demanding. In fact, according to our findings, we discovered that if the wastages and leakages and corruption of this government is cut, Nigeria on an annual basis can save the sum of 1 trillion naira, 767 billion, 820 million and 800,000. I'm sorry that I mixed the figures together. The money is too much. But the round figure is that this government on an annual basis can save 1.7 trillion to begin to inject into our public education system, especially at the tertiary level, to begin to address the infrastructural gaps. And how would they save this money? We think that the government can save 8.4 billion naira if we decide not to buy new vehicles for Tinubu, the vice president, and the first lady. The office of the first lady itself is an illegal and unconstitutional office, but billions of naira have been voted at a period when we need money to fund education for this office. If they can cut that, we will save 8.4 billion naira for that. We will save 14.3 billion naira, sorry, if the renovation of the residences of Tinubu and Shetima is stopped. And we have to ask ourselves, when their predecessor, Buhari and his vice were living, did they go with all the furnitures and curtains? If they did, they should let us know so that EFCC can go after them to retrieve the nation's properties from them. How can you say that the residence that we know is in opulent state has to be renovated with this amount when students are living, like pigs in campuses across the country? We can save 14 billion of that. We can save 220 million if the sitting allowance and honorarium of the president and the VP alone for a year is cut. Apart from salaries and allowances, apart from the fact that their feeding and their clothing as the first and second family is being taken care of with public treasury, the vice president and the president also collect sitting allowance and honorarium. This has to be stopped. We can save 260 billion if the security vote by governors is cut. A tiny state in the southwest here, Osun State, the governor revealed last month that his security vote is 600 million. So you can imagine how much Lagos State security vote is. And this money is a lie, because there's budget for police, there's budget for army. So security vote is just slush fund for the governor to do as he wishes, with. If we stop this criminal allocation of security vote, we will save 260 billion that we can put into the service of education. We will save 34 billion if you decide to cut by 50% alone the salaries and allowances of 109 senators and the 360 House of Representative members. Just last week, we had information that the senators, 109 of them, donated their December salary to Kaduna victims. We said thanks, but no thanks. It is criminality, but some Nigerians have been applauding it. But what people don't realize is that is actually a confirmation that the senators have just made, that their salary is just minor, and that there are other illegal and legal sources through which they are stealing Nigeria's resources. Because ordinary Nigerians, if they donate their full salary in a month, that means they are going to starve for the next 30 days. But these people are saying they want to donate their salary. It's a confirmation that there is more. And it is true. According to a think tank, TS, they said that the total cost of the salary and allowances of the National Assembly elected members is 69 billion naira annually. So these people that donated 109 billion, they think that we are fools. We are not fools. We are demanding a cut, a 50% cut in that. Last but not the least, comrades and ladies and gentlemen, we can save 1,450 billion naira. We can save 1 trillion naira. If we do what? If we end the contract system in this country, we can save that annually. According to the new FCC chairman, last 2 weeks, he said that 2.9 trillion was lost within a period of 2 years from 2018 to 2020 on the basis of contract and procurement fraud. And what does that mean? If they say they want to construct 840 kilometers of road, they'll give it to a contractor. Contractor will pay the budget. Road that's supposed to cost 1 naira per kilometer, they'll put it for 10 naira per kilometer. Because the minister will collect his cuts. Permanent secretary will collect his own. National Assembly, that the road project follows that constituency, will collect his own. Director will collect. Councillor will still collect. Chairman, the local government, we collect. And of course, Baale, Omonile, and co will collect. So at the end of the day, the amount that Nigeria used to construct a kilometer of road is the highest in West Africa. Go and find out. And it is true. This means that huge percentage of our public resources are filtering away. If this is cut and ended, we can begin to realize an additional 1 trillion naira every year that can be put into education. The sum of all of this amount is about 1.7 trillion. And we think that there is even more. But education is not the only thing that needs to be funded. There is healthcare. And that's why we are saying that if the commanding height of this economy is put under public ownership with democratic workers' control, you can just begin to see that there's a lot of work in this country that can actually be made available to meet the needs of all. And that's why we socialists are correct when we continue to say that the only problem why Nigeria is in the situation it is, it's not because there's no resources. It's not because Africa is cursed. It is because of the system of capitalism, which ensures that public resources ends up in the pocket of a few, and that the economy is run to meet with the interest of a few instead of the mass majority of the people. We need to turn things around. We need the revolutionary overthrow of the prevailing capitalist economic system and its replacement by a socialist system run by workers and purpose government. That kind of government can be able to ensure that the wealth of this country is placed under democratic workers' control and nationalized to meet the needs of all. And there's an example, even in the first republic in this country, when with just agriculture, Nigeria was able to fund education, to even provide free education in the western region. That was not a socialist government at that time, but it just gives an idea of how vast our public resources is and what it can do if it is well managed. Today, on the basis of crude oil, Nigeria's economy is 10 times larger than what it was in the 70s. The revenue that is at the command of government across the country is 10 times much more larger than what was the case in the 70s. But yet, when you look at the condition of public education, healthcare, and co, there is nothing to write home about. Comrades, ladies and gentlemen, I've done what I used to do again. It is meant to be a brief welcome remark. It is turning to a long speech. But it is, we have been in this struggle for so long, and it seems that every time the government succeeds at deceiving the people into accepting policies that are detrimental to their interest. Just a few years ago, government came and said the only solution to electricity in Nigeria is to privatize it. How many years after now? Is there light? There's no light anywhere. That is the same situation that they are bringing to the other sector, and we must oppose it. So basically, we are calling on Nigerian students, education workers, that we must fight. We must demand, first and foremost, the conversion of the student loan into a grant to support the living expenses, of undergraduates. We must demand the reversal of all high fees across campuses. We must demand the increase in allocation to education in the 2024 budget. At the moment, it is just 7.9%. We need to demand as a first step for it to be increased to 15% as a basis, to ensuring that there's more resources, to provide for education. We are demanding the slash in the profligate expenses and salaries and allowances of local office holders. We also demand democratic management of our schools, end to attacks on democratic rights, for the restatement of all victimized students and staff activists. And last but not the least, we are demanding that the economy should nationalize under democratic workers' control. Comrades, this is the summary, of what we are here to do today. I'll be giving the stage, to the